so they're the black Puerto Ricans, basically, just for those who don't know. It's like, we are everywhere, right? So, I didn't grow up eating arepas. I grew up eating like acapurias and pastelitos and papas rellenas, a whole bunch of other stuff, right? And so when my husband and I started dating, he's Colombian, and he was like, you gotta make arepas. And I was like, I don't know nothing about an arepa, okay? Like, and again, I'm from New York, so like New York, it's like you're Jamaican, you're Puerto Rican, you're Dominican. That's about it. You might find like a, Barbados, like, but like that's about it. Like there's not a lot of South Americans, a lot of South American representation in New York, right? So I really didn't know anything about an arepa, and so he was kind of just like, oh, you don't know? And so he feels like he changed my life, which I'll give it to him. It's a big deal. I love an arepa. I'm like, truth be told, I love it. And I think the thing that's dope about it is that first of all, it's corn. So so when I started touring, one of the things that I started noticing was just the fact that like we all eat the same stuff. And like as much as like it feels like we are separate and language separates us and all these things, culturally I feel like as a diaspora, like we really do all eat the same things. And so an arepa, really for me, whether it's, Mexicans eat a taco, Puerto Ricans eat, we use a lot of the yuca, thank you, and we use a lot of plantain. It's a really simpler thing. It's simple. It's a base, right? So it's kind of like, to me, I feel like it's a canvas, and it's sort of like it's a starting point. So it's like it's really simple, but it's like grits. Really, it's grits. Okay, so I have family from the South also. It's grits, or like if you're in Zimbabwe, it's sadza. If you're in Nigeria or Ghana, it's mfufu. Like it's literally like it's the same thing. We all eat the same stuff. It's just that they do it in a more like a disc, like a patty, as opposed to like eating it more like grits, where you're eating it with a spoon. But if you cook grits down, it's the exact same thing. You could literally take grits and do the exact same thing, just so that we're on the same page, right? Okay, so while your water is boiling, I'm going to kind of start mine just so you can see what the process is going to be, right? So, can you see this? It's like dry grits, okay? That's exactly what it's like.
If you want to show.
Oh, here, yeah. Dry grits. Okay. Or like if you're Moorish and you're in Spain, then it's polenta. Or, you know what I mean? Like I said, it's all the same thing. So you wet it just so it becomes like a dough, right? And I'm going to salt it. I think they sent us salt here. And actually, we'll use this lovely truffle salt. It smells bomb. And think about grits though, like it looks like a lot of salt, but like it's very mild in flavor. So it takes up anything that you kind of like season it with, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna mix this all in. Like, Crystal, if you want to hop in there, girl, hop in there, say whatever you need to say. I'm like, I feel you. Okay, so, yeah, I'm like, feel free. I'm like, we are not precious here. Say what you got to say. It's totally fine. And so I'm just mixing this in here. Yes. Okay, you know what? I'm going to, I'll be honest with you. So, I've always, found it important to, own my property, right? And so, when I first started working and signed my first deal, one of the first things I did was, because I'm an artist and we need our own space and I might work one year and not work another. So buying a property was a big deal for me, right? And so I've always had my own home. And it's crazy because we bought this property last year, and I'll tell you something, there's something about land that's very different than just owning a home. Owning a home is obviously dope. We all need to do that, right? But land, there's something about land there. It's it's hard to describe, but like it's game changing. Like it really felt.
Well, people think land is impossible.
Well, people think that land, and that's a good point. People think that land is impossible. And one of the things that I've learned in my hunt for this farm was that like it's so much more feasible than you think it is. Like real talk, it really is. And one of my biggest kind of like every young woman that I know, I'm like, girl, what are you buying? What are you doing? Like, get you some land. Like it's the most important thing because it is so much more feasible than we think it is. If you, like I put myself on all these lists because I'm constantly looking. But like even in California, like I found land for like under $50,000, like land, actual land that you can own, like an acre where you can just hold on to it and plant stuff. And you never know what's going to happen. But there's something about owning like the dirt, right? Like the land where it's like, there's a real power and comfort in it. For me, that was game changing. It's control. You know, it's like, I feel like with all the stuff that's been happening in the world and everything that's going on, like being able to grow my own food, knowing that like there's no GMOs, there's no like misconstrued idea about what organic is, or like all those things that like matter to me, especially like as a mother and as a chef. Like I felt like that changed my life, you know? And so like for me, wanting to just have more control, the land was kind of paramount. Like that was everything for us, you know? And I love it. We're in the process of expanding our garden now. We started off with a small, I guess it was like 20 by 30 kind of like small garden, and it was booming. And I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then we started going into like, oh God, we started growing everything, and then we put our chickens in there, and then our chickens ate everything. And now we've expanded the garden, and we're starting to grow, I mean, literally everything, like from carrots to beets to Brussels sprouts to kale to arugula. I have a bunch of fruit trees. We bought this property, and it has an olive grove, so we have olive oil. We press our own olives. I just think as like a Black farmer, like it's so important. Like this, well, the land was taken from us, right? And so like I think that being able to regain that, like it became unsexy for a minute. Like everyone was like, I'm farming. Like everyone associated it with like the worst part of our history. But the reality is that like there is such power in growing your own food, and for me that was really kind of game changing, really. If your water is boiling, just quick tip, if your water is boiling, go ahead. No, go ahead, Gia. I'll wait for you. No, go ahead. No, it's not urgent. Go. I follow her. Yes. She's dope. She does everything. She like, yeah. She's beekeeping. She's doing she's dope. Absolutely. Oh, for sure. Well, also when you look at like how, here's the thing, right? Like, first of all, the fact that like the image of farmer, like the first thing you think about is not a Black woman, that right there is blasphemous, okay? Because the reality is that when you look at, if you actually look at the statistics around the world, the women who are harvesting, who are really farming around the world, they're indigenous, they're brown women, okay? So they look a lot like us. They look a lot more like us than they do the image that we have of, you know, some white guy that's like doing this massive freaking ruining the land farming. The reality is that like most of the harvesters and most of the real, like doing the real work, it's us. And the reality is that the land was taken from us. You know what I mean? Like so much, even after all of the, abolition of slavery and all of that, and I do it in quotations because it's nonsense. But the point is, after all of that, like, so, you know, in the 1930s, that more than 35% of America's farms were owned by Black families. Do you know that today, In 2021, it's less than 2%. That's disgusting. And you know why? It's because they took it. So banks wouldn't give loans to expand, to make it like to grow. It's all systematic. You know why? Because they know that if you own your land and you farm your own food, you have control over your family and the health of your children and of yourself. When we look at like high blood pressure and all the issues in the Black community, that's not right. Because when you go back to the continent, like that stuff doesn't exist. So it means it's something to do with the food, right? So it's like we have to take control back. We have to. Like our children's lives depend on it. And to me, I just feel like just knowing that, like for me, it was so important to be able to say, you know what? We can do this. Like, this is ours. And I totally agree that like there's something about like standing on your own land, putting your feet in the dirt, saying this is mine. And actually, again, scientifically, it's backed up that like walking for half an hour in the dirt with no shoes on, it grounds you, it brings you back. So that's just a little tidbit there. I'm like, I won't go anymore, but I'm like, I could go on for days. Right, it's like, it's a safe space. It's a safe space. I love it. Go for it.